You will find it at Westside Decorating Center. Stop in and visit them today and next Friday. Mike Stoddard from Westside Decorating will be with me here on WSGW to answer your questions about paint and wallpaper. So mark that down on your calendar for next Friday. Also, we were expecting a guest this morning, but he's tied up. So we'll tell you something coming up with Sheriff Bill Federspiel. And then we'll have open phones for the hour. 989-752-6111 is the number. Sheriff is going to be having a concert. As you know, Sheriff Federspiel is not only a great sheriff, but he's a very talented musician and does a lot of tribute shows for artists like Kenny Rogers and the like. And one of those is Bob Seger. He's going to be doing his Shakedown Bob Seger tribute show May 17th, which is a week from Saturday, at the Bertrand Motor Speedway. It's going to be 8 o'clock at night, and tickets are $25. And if you're interested in seeing the Bob Seger tribute done by Sheriff Federspiel, I have tickets. You can email me at artlewis@wsgw.com, and we'll get back with you and arrange to get them to you somehow. Or if you run into some other support deputies, and proceeds benefit the support unit of the Sheriff's Department, which in the last number of years, each year contributes about 17,000 hours of service to the citizens of Saginaw County, which otherwise would not get done, or we'd have to pull road officers off the road to do the things that the support unit does. So I just thought I'd mention that. We'll mention it again. So as I said, open phones for the hour, 989-752-6111. There is a new pope, Pope Leo XIV, formerly Cardinal Provost. And what makes this one so different, that by birth he's an American. No one thought that was going to be possible. He wasn't on the list of top 10. He was considered a long shot, and yet on the fourth round of voting, the cardinal electors selected him to be the Pope, Pope Leo XIV. Interesting background. I was talking to Bishop Gruss about him this morning. Born and raised in Chicago, graduated Villanova University, and as a priest spent a lot of time in Peru. Toward the end of his priesthood in Peru, he was the archbishop in that area. He spent 10 years down there, and then he came back to Chicago for a while, did some things in Chicago, and then went back to Peru. He holds dual citizenship, U.S. and Peruvian. And then a few years ago, Pope Francis tapped him to come to the Vatican to work in an official position. And in 2023, he was named Cardinal by Pope Francis. And yesterday, as you all know by now, he was elected Pope. And in talking to the bishop and some others, no one sees much change coming. And what do I mean by that? Well, he was a devotee, if you will, of Pope Francis. Followed Pope Francis's lead and probably will continue in that same vein of representing those in the most need in the world and the impoverished and the poor, as his predecessor did. And we have to remember he worked in Peru for a total of 20 years in very poor areas, dealing with those in the most need. So we would not expect, and by the way, I'm speaking as an outsider to the church. These are things that I've learned by talking to people who are inside the church. They don't expect much change in terms of the way the church liturgically is operated, or for that matter, in any other way. He thinks that that Pope Leo XIV will probably follow pretty much in the footsteps of Pope Francis. Very personable, though, apparently. He chose yesterday to deliver his remarks after being named Pope in Italian and Spanish, not English. And many think that was intentional because he did something later in English and talked about the church and his selection. It's going to be interesting. First one from America ever in the history of the church. And it took only a day and a half, 4 votes, for him to be selected. And in recent years, that's been the trend. 2 votes, 3 votes, 4 votes. There haven't been any of the lengthy conclaves that we've read about in the past. Now, whether that means the Cardinals go in already knowing what's going to happen or not, don't know. One of the most secretive things that can happen in the world is that conclave. They have got it tied up tight. You never hear any leaks coming from inside the conclave. The Cardinals are all sworn to secrecy, and they uphold that pledge. And again, for me as an outsider, I find it fascinating only because it's historical. It's history being made. And someone who will have influence over 1.4 billion people, plus, when you think of it, others, because he is a, quote, world leader. So it is always interesting to see who they pick and what direction that individual leads the church. But as I said, don't expect much change. It appears it's going to be pretty much status quo for now. All right, and again, open phones for the hour, 989-752-6111. If you have some reaction to the naming of Cardinal Prevost as Pope Leo XIV, give us a call. Let's talk about it, that or whatever else is on your mind. What's on my mind right now are my friends at McDonald Ford in Freeland. And you've noticed it's harder and harder to find products that say Made in America. Well, with the uncertainty of tariffs, it's becoming even more important. McDonald Ford, in anticipation of those tariffs, stocked their lot with tariff-free vehicles, and they have many more en route. Not only are they tariff-free, but Ford is offering employee pricing for everyone. So you don't pay any more than a Ford employee does. And in addition, let's say you're a Chrysler import buyer. Maybe you'd like to consider a Ford. Now's the best time because you'll receive the lowest price offered. Chevy truck buyers, you can get the truck that maybe you've always wanted, the Ford F-150, at employee pricing. So you see, now's the right time to visit McDonald Ford M47 in Freeland for the best selection and the lowest price. Don't let tariffs prevent you from getting the vehicle of your choice at a price you can afford. Visit McDonald Ford in Freeland today. Remember, tariff-free and employee pricing for everyone. And Ford has announced it is extending employee pricing through July 6th. That's an additional month of employee pricing. Stop into McDonald Ford today.
What's the most important part of a retirement?
All right, we're back with you here on WSGW. As I mentioned, talking about the Pope when he came out on the balcony after being elected as Pope, he delivered in Italian and Spanish. He did have a first Mass, though, as Pope, and he started it in English. And it is so rare to hear a Pope whose native tongue is English that I thought we'd play just a little bit of it, because he does go into Latin later on in the discussion.
I'll begin with a word in English, and the rest is in Italian. But I want to repeat the words from the responsorial psalm. I will sing a new song to the Lord because he has done marvels. And indeed, not just with me, but with all of us, my brother cardinals, as we celebrate this morning, I invite you to recognize the marvels that the Lord has done, the blessings that the Lord continues to pour out upon all of us. Through the ministry of Peter, you have called me to carry that cross and to be blessed with that mission. And I know I can rely on each and every one of you to walk with me as we continue as a church, as a community of friends of Jesus, as believers, to announce the good news, to announce the gospel. To say, il Cristo, il Figlio del Dio vivente.
And then he went into the Italian Mass after that. So there you are. First American Pope, and his first expressions in English as he celebrated his first Mass. To our phones this morning, Carl is with us in Saginaw. Good morning, Carl.
Good morning, Art. Well, I hope good luck to the Pope.
Absolutely.
And I hope Catholics all around the world are happy right now and looking forward to his, I know it's supposed to be a long years. I hear he's only like 69 years old.
Yeah, he's 69, so he could have a long tenure.
He could. Art, I was wondering, do you think that Donald Trump listens to your program?
I doubt it. No.
Really?
No.
Well, he consumes a lot of media. That's what they say.
Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering. Because a couple days ago we were talking about raising taxes on billionaires, and lo and behold, you see what Donald Trump has come out and said, that he wants the Congress to consider raising taxes on the highest wage earners.
Raising taxes on the highest wage earners. That's not what we were talking about, though, were we?
We were talking about raising taxes on billionaires.
No, we were talking about cutting taxes on billionaires, because that's what your side of the aisle's been preaching, that he's just going to cut taxes on billionaires. Well, guess what? I guess he's not.
I guess he's not. Well, that's a change.
I don't think so. He wanted to cut
really?
taxes across the board. So if there's a change, he's going to exclude the very wealthy. Okay, works for me.
Well, there's a lot of Republicans in Congress who are not very crazy about this idea. You know, they don't want to raise taxes, but the problem they have is they can't get their budget to balance the way it is now. And that's why Trump is talking about this.
When was the last time anybody got their budget to balance?
Well, if they want to pass this reconciliation through Congress, you know, this big budget bill, their beautiful bill they're talking about, they have to show that at least they can pay for the budget. And right now they can't get the numbers to add up.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
And like I said, there's a lot of Republicans, they do not want to raise taxes on billionaires. That's not what they've been campaigning on all these years.
We'll see.
So,
time will tell.
We'll see.
That's the old story, you know. Time will tell.
I just wonder, well, you know, there's a part of the MAGA group party, they want to raise taxes on billionaires. The Steve Bannon wing of the MAGA party, they're down with raising taxes on the
I
rich.
didn't know Steve Bannon had his own wing.
Well, he has a following, Art.
He has a following,
millions of
okay, yeah,
people.
but it's not his own wing of the
Yeah,
party.
and
I
there's-
mean, listen, within the Republican Party, there are divergent views, which, by the way, is the same as the Democratic Party, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay,
but this
so
is
why point it out? Because both parties have people within their parties that disagree.
how many top Republicans are in favor of raising taxes on the rich?
I don't know. I've never polled them.
Well, I don't think there's any.
Well,
So
that's a guess on your part, and I'm not going to guess. So I don't know.
well, okay,
All right,
all right.
fair enough.
Well, we'll see what happens.
You bet. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And let's talk to Paul in Saginaw. Paul, good morning.
Morning, Art. Art, I wanted to give you my assessment or take as an amateur, and not not an expert, of why I believe these cardinals selected this particular pope. As we know, we've heard that he has been a missionary in Peru there for 20 plus years. And over the last 50, 60 years, there's been a lot of Catholics who've left the church, in fact, about 70%. So my take is I believe they elected this guy here so that he can be a missionary and evangelize and re-evangelize those lost Catholics who have left, as well as evangelize to new people to make converts. What do you think of that assumption?
I'm going to give you my take on it as the same thing you are, not an expert. I suspect they elect every pope to do that.
Well, in this case, he does have experience as a missionary.
Yeah,
not
but
every priest. has
Not
an
everyone
experience as
does,
a missionary.
but
Huh?
many do. It's not. It would be more unusual to come across someone as a cardinal who has not had experience with it.
Well, I don't know. A lot of them are diocesan priests, and they just work in their diocese.
Well, yeah, but then they get to be archbishops, and then they get to be bishops, then they get to be archbishops, then they get to be cardinals, and their flock increases, and within that
Right.
flock, there are lots of needs to
Right.
every one of them.
But they're only pastoring those that they have to them. They're not pastoring to those who have left, or they're not pastoring to convert those who are not Catholic. You see what I'm saying?
I would disagree with that, knowing several priests and knowing the bishops that I have known. Every one of them attempts to evangelize and bring the flock back and bring new people into the flock. That's part of their job.
Yeah, they do that to a certain extent. But a missionary, that's his full-time job, to evangelize and to convert those, in his come in contact with.
I suspect that Pope Leo XIV was selected because they wanted to follow in the footsteps of Pope Francis. And I would be willing to bet that was the overriding decision. Don't know, wasn't in there. Nobody else was either. Never find out. But that's my guess.
They said he was a personal friend of the Pope, so obviously they know each other. And so, they know how each other thought.
Yeah.
So they're probably thinking along the same lines. All right, that's my take.
Take care. Yep, enjoy.
All right.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And Gene, hang on. We'll get to you next.
Look right now, and I think because he is so pure and his priorities is peace, people love one another and they have peace. I think that people in other religions are going to eventually love and admire him. And I think he's eventually going to also be a great world leader.
Well, let me address that, because I'm going to agree with you to a large extent, because I've always felt that a pope not only is the head of the 1.4 billion members of the Catholic Church, but that what happens within his leadership does have influence on other Christians in the world. He can't administer them like he does his own, but certainly his words, and if they are words of peace, as you say, and hope, anybody can accept that. Not just Christians, for that matter.
Well,
so he will have influence.
I think not just Christians, but I think all religions all over the world, because he's a younger man. When you get old, you don't have the energy to do everything you want to do.
Tell me about
but
it.
Him being a younger man, I seriously think that God has put him there, and I seriously think he's going to become a world leader.
Well, first of all,
thanks for listening to my opinion.
First of all, the church would totally agree with you, because it's generally accepted that any pope is God's choice, and that the cardinals act because of the Spirit of God, that they are led to select a certain individual who is the choice of the Holy Spirit. So, it goes without saying that he was chosen by God to do the job. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I think he is so exceptional. I think he's going to be a world leader.
Well, I hope so.
I hope so too, and I hope everybody prays for him. And thanks for listening to my opinion.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling
Bye.
me. Bye-bye. And that opens up the lines, 989-752-6111. It is, I think it's interesting that the world pays so much attention to the selection of a new pope, because that tends to support the notion that it is an important position that folks of or not of the Catholic faith look to for certain types of leadership. So we wish him well. I mean, it's like anybody who's, for example, President of the United States, whether I voted for him or not. I don't want to see them fail, because if a president fails, we all fail. And if a president is successful, we're all successful. So I wouldn't wish failure on anyone. I hope this new pope is a leader who can convince, first of all, his flock to follow him, and then he speaks peace and speaks for those who don't have a big voice. I mean, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And you don't have to be a member of his religion to appreciate whatever his messages are. So there you go. All right, we're going to take a break. Lines open for you, 989-752-6111.
Looking for top quality seafood at
And we're back with you on the Art Lewis Show. Back to our phones. We go back up to Bay City. And Al, good morning.
Morning, Arthur. My question is, I understand he's a good friend of the president of Villanova, where he went to school, and also the fact that I'd like to know whether he's a Chicago Cub or a Chicago White Sox fan.
There was actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I read something yesterday about that. While he's never said it one way or another, somebody that knew him thought that he was a Cubs fan. So I don't know for sure. But that was in the story, that he was a Cubs fan.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if he comes back here sometime. Well, he sits on the White Sox, or with the Cubs.
Maybe he'll come back to a game where they both play each other, and he'll be up in a suite, and nobody will know which side it is.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to seeing him come back here anyway.
I bet he will. I'll bet we will see him in the same way we saw Pope Francis, but I suspect we will. I suspect that he will make his way around the world.
Yep. Well, anyway, I'm glad he's the Pope. I think he'll do a lot for being the Pope.
Well, let's hope so.
Okay, thank you.
You bet, Al. Thanks. Yeah, it's funny that he brought that up because it was in an article I read yesterday. It was talking about how it got to it. I don't remember now, but it was talking about him in Chicago and everything. And somebody had asked the question: is he a White Sox or a Cubs fan? And while he's never said that we know of, anyway, someone who knew him thought that he was a Cubs fan. So time will tell. Oh my goodness, the things we think about at such a time, interesting. But, it's the first time an American has ever been named Pope. Never happened before in history. And so when I said that, I watch the smoke, I watch for the smoke, it's history in the making. Even though I'm not a member of the faith, doesn't matter. It's history in the making. While other world leaders are selected, appointed, assume, this particular world leader is selected in such a secret way that goes back thousands of years. It really is a great history in the making. Great history in the making. Anyway, time will tell. Right now, I think she's like the president of the United States is a honeymoon period. Everybody's going, yeah, okay, let's see what happens. Give him his lead, let him do his thing. So in the meantime, let's talk to Scott in Freeland. Scott, good morning.
Good morning, Art.
Morning.
Hey, go Tigers.
Yeah.
Go.
You must be driving. Are you?
Let me stop real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in a parking lot. The Pope is a good thing for the world. It's also proof that Trump's tariffs are working.
What is?
Trump's tariffs.
Oh, yeah.
The first American Pope.
So what did Trump's tariffs had to do with that?
He's from America.
Well, yeah, I know he's from
America. The first one.
Yeah, I would.
Said he's going to make America great again, and that's just my thought.
Well, that's interesting. I doubt if the 134 Cardinals, besides himself, voted that way, but works for me.
Yep, works for me too. Have a good day, Art.
Thanks. Bye. And I think we're going to begin to see the chink in the armor, so to speak, of the president's tariff efforts. We've now seen the United Kingdom come to the table, come up with an agreement, and there's going to